Hello, everybody. This is Jim Hoft with Gateway Pundit, and I am just thrilled to have with me today Enrique Tarrio. I think, Enrique, we have probably written about 500 articles about you at Gateway Pundit over the years, and this is the first time I really get to not even meet you in person, but meet you on camera. So it's a privilege. Glad to see you're out of prison.
Thank you, Jim, and it's an honor for me to be here with you. Yes, you have written probably upwards of 500 articles. I'd probably say more. I think the first article you guys that the Gateway wrote was in 2017, I believe. Um, and they've been the most honest pieces that I've seen. Like they're truly just fair and balanced. So for that, I appreciate you. I appreciate the writers at the Gateway Pundit for always seeking the truth and covering the stories that nobody wants to cover because honestly, they are the truth. And we don't see that in journalism anymore.
Well, I really appreciate that. And, we had some great reporters who covered your story, especially throughout your J6 period, the J6 sentencing court and everything. Alicia Powell and Kara Castronova and myself and others have followed your story very closely. And actually, I think it was Kara who did some outstanding work
Two,
on
two
covering
very
the trial.
two very very talented writers right there. Kara, I saw this weekend. I did see Alicia this weekend. So yeah, very appreciative of their work.
Oh, that's outstanding. All right. So I thought I had several questions. We'll try to get through this, in a relatively decent amount of time. But maybe you could tell us a little bit of your background with the Proud Boys and then how you became chairman. And what is the Proud Boys? People, of course, the media makes it sound like you're the largest terrorist group in the country or something like that. Tell us what attracted you, what got you going on with the Proud Boys.
So I'm a Cuban American. I'm a first generation Cuban. I was born here in the States. I was the first one in my family to be born here in the States. And my family came from a very political place, came from an oppressed communist dictatorship. My family was assassinated at the direct command of Che Guevara. So when they fled, they came to this country and they knew one thing: they didn't want it to be like the country they left. So every morning, my house is the political thunder house of the neighborhood. There's always like 25 to 30 Cubans here every morning talking about whether it's American politics, Cuban politics, foreign policy. So I was raised in a home that dedicated themselves to governance and foreign policy specifically. So that got me very active, and I started in 2004 with the second Bush campaign. Please don't judge me. Um, and I've worked every general, midterm, and special election here locally since then.
Wow.
2016, we saw something revolutionary: was the nomination and the election of Donald J. Trump, which electrified the country and electrified me to get a little bit more active because I was already very active. Um, I met these guys called the Proud Boys. I had remotely heard about them. There was only 150 Proud Boys in existence when I joined the group, and you know, uh, I started. I co-founded the chapter down here in Miami, and again, I'm very political, so I moved my local chapter in a very political direction. I was good with organizing events, organizing groups, and managing people. And we had an election in 2018, which for the chairman of the Proud Boys, which is the central leadership spokesman role, which I didn't have. I've never had executive privilege over the guys where I could say, "Hey, you got to do this or you're out." I can't do that. Um, we're a small government organization. We want small government, so we believe in small government within the Proud Boys. I got voted in unanimously, and since 2018, since the end of 2018, I was the chairman of the Proud Boys all the way through 2022. 2022, we've made a policy to not state what our national structure is publicly, but I am the president of my local chapter here in the Proud Boys.
All right, and that's how it got going. And
Yeah.
then so that was around 2018, and then we started hearing more about you. And as the media turn his focus and attention towards the Proud Boys. I think there was one event in New York where they arrested some Proud Boys and they went to prison because they beat up some Antifa guys who attacked them first.
Yes.
That doesn't get in the news, but so they were already painting the Proud Boys as this very radical, right wing, racist. Of course, they have to throw that in. They don't mention that you're Cuban American, and they never mentioned that, you
Yeah.
know. And so they started painting this as the Proud Boys, a very radical group, and sadly, when the media does this, we still have a lot of Republicans, and we still have a lot of people who still trust the mainstream media, and they started kind of building their belief around what you were, what your group was from the media narrative, which is very sad. So this was already building up in 2018 or so. I know that there was some confrontations. I think there was a couple Proud Boys activities across the country where they got some violence, right? Is that right?
Yes, yes. And the media always just reports on like that part of the Proud Boys, and we're actually proud of it, right? Because what we basically do is we always will put ourselves between the Trump supporters and these nasty protesters, which are little terrorists, um, because they'll throw bricks. There was one time in DC that we had a credible threat of an acid attack um, towards the public at an event. I think it was a 4th of July event back in 2019. So this isn't like a new thing, but yes, most of the cameras always get on us because we're defending Trump supporters, and I'd even say like that's only about 10% of what the Proud Boys do. Actually, 90% of the membership has never gone to a Trump rally. They're big Trump supporters, but the most political thing they've done in their lives is just go check a box at the polling station. The most important thing to us is make better men. So we started at our homes, and that's what most of the guys believe. Um, and there's some of us that are a little bit more political than the other guys, so that's the ones that the media covers the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do know from a couple of these events in after 2018 that Antifa would come out and, like you said, get violent. You guys would react, and the story then would be about the Proud Boys, assaulting people or something. So this is the narrative they painted for a couple of years. It's really disgusting, and so this was all happening at the same time. Anyway, is there anything more during that period that you think is something that people need to know about, or we can?
Before the election of 2020, I mean, there was most of it focused, I guess, like most of the publicity was focused around like those events, and I kind of get it. Um, when you put your hands on Trump supporters, or you put your hands on us, or you put your hands on women and children, like we've seen with these BLM groups and these Antifa groups, um, we will answer, and sometimes we'll answer. We're rough around the edges, we cuss like sailors. We're not everybody's cup of tea, and I understand that. I completely understand it. My guys understand it too. But that's what it looks like. That's what self-defense looks like. When we're defending people, that's what it looks like. And unfortunately, the left uses that as a propaganda. We always do things in self-defense. You'll never see a Proud Boy go protest something. That's actually very important. So if there's something going on, you'll never see us counter protest something. We will go to like Drag Queen Story Hour and protest that. But like if there's like an event where there's like Antifa and BLM, we'll never go there. They come to us because we know how to party and we throw great parties, and they want to be part of that party. But they come with party favors that we don't allow them to come, which is bricks and amongst other things that they use bats and acid, ball bearings.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's really pretty much before the pre-election season of 2020.
Right.
I guess.
And that's basically what we reported at Gateway. It seemed like every time there was the Proud Boys were in the news, it was because Antifa or Black Lives Matter or some other group of leftists were attacking Proud Boys, and then they reacted, and so that's how what I believe we've reported.
Yeah, we also do like a lot of fun stuff. We'll go heckle Obama in the middle of his speech. You guys covered that. Things like that. We do a lot of like fun things. Like I guess when it comes to activism, like we'll be funny about it. So yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so this brings us up to then the election of 2020, and of course, election night, Trump's way ahead. All the battleground states, he's kicking ass, and we start seeing the TV flip votes, in different states, at least 7 times where they're flipping votes from Trump to Biden. Then we see the next morning, everybody wakes up, and my goodness, Joe Biden has mysterious spikes in the middle of the night, and he pulled ahead in every swing state,
Yeah.
swing state, and then he ends up even taking Pennsylvania, where Trump was ahead by almost a million votes, 700,000 votes on election night, and somehow they were able to steal that too. And we reported that at the time, and we still believe that it was stolen. I think a lot of Americans did, and that's why in December of 2020 there started being some protests in Washington D.C. and other places, but in Washington D.C. and people were very angry about it because there were millions and millions of Americans who saw what happened and believed that that election was stolen. One thing I remember, I had this friend who was over at the house, a black woman. She's cleaning our house the next morning, and I just, forgive me, I assumed that she was a Democrat, and she's like, that election got stolen. They stole that from Donald Trump. I mean, it was very apparent what was going on. So then the next time we heard of the Proud Boys really was in December of 2020. There was a couple big protests in Washington D.C. about
November and December.
what's that?
November and December.
Okay, and they were calling for, I don't know if they called it Stop the Steal then, but they were people very upset about the election and what they thought was a stolen election. So Proud Boys made the news then too.
Yeah. So there was a couple things too. I think that you have to kind of put yourself in a time machine and see what the energy was there. I think there was also a lot of anger about a lot of things, and I think that the stolen election was the straw that broke the camel's back. It dates all the way back to 2016 with Hillary Clinton, right? She decided to call us the basket of deplorables, right? And that was the beginning. That was the first snowball. Then they deplatform us, which you covered. They debanked us, which you covered. They took us off all social media platforms, not just me, but Alex Jones, and a lot of Trump supporters were taken off social media. So they kill our voices too. Um, and then you fast forward to 2020, you got the summer of love of 2020, where the BLM is literally burning down cities. And then we have the lockdowns where the government's telling us how to run our businesses, how long we got locked down, which you covered. And then, here we go, we're treated like subhumans. And then here they come and they steal an election from us. I had varying. I got to be honest. I had varying opinions throughout after the election, whether the election was stolen or not. At the end, obviously, where I landed was that the election was stolen, because there was conflicting information. I kind of just sat back and I'm like, let me watch this thing from behind. So there was a lot of anger towards Trump supporters, in the lead up to that. And honestly, they just grew tired, and that's why you saw the big rallies, and they were actually called the Million MAGA March, and that was in November and December.
Right, and those are both in D.C. And I know I had a friend go there who writes some for Gateway Pundit now, and she was calling me saying people were getting beat in the street then. So they went to these rallies, peaceful Trump rallies, like they always are.
Yes.
And they started getting beat in the street in Washington D.C. and they had to run for their lives because Antifa and that crowd was out.
Well, you mentioned election night and how people felt. You know how I felt on election night? I was in DC. I got a knife to the gut on election night, and Bev Beatty also got 4 or 5 stab wounds, and there was another 2 gentlemen that got stabbed, and we weren't wearing like identifying gear like Trump stuff. We were just walking to the car, and 3 members of BLM had just left BLM Plaza because there was a an event there, and we got stabbed on election night. Um, I think you guys also reported on that.
I'm
Um,
sure we did.
you guys also reported on that, and you know, so that was the start for me of the 2020 election.
Wow. And how bad was that?
I didn't notice I got stabbed for like about 30 minutes. You know, I was worried about everybody else. I jumped in a patrol car because when the cops came, they wanted to find the people that stabbed all of us, which was 3. And we couldn't find them. So we drove around for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then right when we're coming back, I had this pain in my groin. And I'm like, man, why did I just get kicked in the balls? And when I lift my shirt, I was full of blood. Um, and that was that's how my night started, my election night started. But also in the December rally, I had 4 of my guys stabbed by another member of BLM. So I mean, it's
Mhm.
I'm guessing we're going to talk about my past week. Every time we go to DC, it is insane. That city is not America. It is like Baghdad.
For conservatives and
Towards us, yes, of course.
yeah. Um, those 4 people who were stabbed in December, did they catch that person? I don't recall. Did they, did they catch the person?
Metropolitan Police let them go. Um, yeah, Metropolitan Police. I mean, there's a bigger story that I found out about later on in trial. Um, but yeah, that person was let go and released.
Insane. Yeah, it doesn't work that way on the flip side, does it?
Yeah.
So I knew that they were violent. Those protests were violent, and I believe, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, or I knew going up to January 6th in the Stop the Steal rally that I knew the Proud Boys were going to be there, and I knew that you guys and the Oath Keepers were going to be providing security.
Yes.
And I believe people welcome that because they had heard the stories, and so anyway, that's what I recall. What you guys were doing in DC that day.
Yeah, that's for the November and December rallies, we're pretty much providing security for, and we actually cleaned the streets of Antifa and BLM on both evenings, on the evening of November 14th and the evening of December 12th, plus or minus a couple days before and after. You know, and there wasn't, at night is when they come out really and they do their dirt, although they did come out during the day in smaller numbers and do their dirt. But at night, I can tell you that there was hardly any assaults from Antifa and BLM because we would push them back every time. They threw fireworks. I don't know if you remember this, outside of the W across the street from Freedom Plaza. They have an outdoor dining area, and these little terrorists came by with giant fireworks and threw them into the crowd of people eating there. Well, 5 minutes later, they regretted it. We made them regret it.
Wow, and that was in December.
That was that's hard to tell because it was so many times, but yeah, I believe it was in the December rally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the people
important happened also on the December rally is a Black Lives Matter banner was burned by me.
that I want to get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about that. So that's you got a lot of publicity for that, a lot of news reports. Because
yeah.
the flag down, I believe.
And then a lot of the media gets this reported wrong, and I'll make it clear for your readers too, because since sometimes they get stories from other sources also. So that night I burned a Black Lives Matter banner. I didn't know where it came from. You know, somebody just brought it and we burned it.
So somebody handed it to you.
Which, as we're having this conversation right now, you know, there's probably a group burning the American flag over there in DC, which is completely legal. And I think it should, as distasteful as it is, I think it should be legal. You know, if I see somebody burning an American flag, then I will do something. I will stop them from doing it, which again might be illegal for me to do, but I wouldn't let it happen. But I got I got arrested for that banner, and then subsequently I got sued for what I believed to be that banner for $2.8 million. Come to find out, this big lawsuit that's been around in the news, I didn't even know it till halfway through the court proceedings of this. I got sued for $2.8 million, not for that banner. I guess there was another banner that people took down. It wasn't the Proud Boys, and they sued me for a banner that I never saw. I don't even know where this place is. Um, I have no idea of it. I thought that that was the banner that I burned, and obviously it's not. Um, and then they decided to try to take our trademark, which is kind of weird because we've never even owned our own trademark. It was like some liberal that took it out. I forgot in what state.
Mhm.
So the judge, when he ruled to take our trademark, he actually took it from somebody that tried to sue us before, tried to stop us from using our name. Um, but yeah, that's again, that's a whole other multiverse in this crazy world that's existed for the past, like, well, it's existed a lot longer than eight years, but yeah, you get me.
So that all happened before January 6th, and
Yeah.
that's why. And I remember that, and they were arresting you, and you were getting some nice media coverage. I shouldn't say nice, a lot of media coverage.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and yet you're saying today that that wasn't even the same banner.
No.
It was a different banner that you were burning.
Yeah, I burned a banner. I admitted to burning the banner. I admitted
Mhm.
to,
Yeah.
I admitted to it.
Uh,
But the
wouldn't that be a misdemeanor or something? I think it's
it's
wild
a
that they think that it's so precious to them that it's that they take this further than maybe a couple hours in jail. I think.
yeah, well, it became a misdemeanor, and the judge was so corrupt. Okay, in DC, a misdemeanor maximum punishment is 6 months, right?
Hmm.
The judge was so corrupt that he read nothing, and he sentenced me 3 times within 5 minutes. He sentenced me first to a year and a half in prison. The prosecutor had to come in and say, "Hey, judge, you can't sentence him to a year and a half in prison. It's actually an illegal sentence." And he gets really mad, and he
Uh,
goes to his office, and he comes back and he goes, "I'm going to give you 9 months in prison." And the prosecutor stood up again. It's like, "Your Honor, that's still an illegal sentence." Uh, and he cussed out the prosecutor for he didn't cuss him out, but he tore up the prosecutor for
for
giving me
knowing the law.
sweetheart deal, I guess. And then he sentenced me to the maximum that he could sentence. Actually, sentenced me to over the maximum because he sentenced me to about 6 months and 3 years probation, which the appellate court overruled because you can't give me probation on the 6 months because it is the maximum sentence. Um, so that happened. And that was the first time arrested, and that's the reason that I wasn't at the events of January 6th.
Right. So you came into town, and then of course there were reports that you flew into Washington D.C. and you had some ammo or something in your gear, and this of course made screaming headlines then on January 4th or 5th, right?
Yeah, so I flew into DC knowing full well that I'd be arrested. Um, that's why I kind of flew into DC on January 4th because DC's a no cash bail state. So I knew I'd be out January 5th, so I could still go watch the president speak on January 6th, which was the plan.
Mhm.
One thing here's where I messed up. I I I had a I had an online merch store called 1776.shop, and we sold lasered magazines. Like we'd put like your company logo on it. And I brought two of them for a friend of mine. I didn't know that empty magazines were a big deal in DC, and I come to find out it's actually two. I got two felonies for it. Um, but
This was
that's not why
that's an empty magazine.
they're empty magazines. Yes.
Oh, I didn't. I guess I didn't realize that. So there
Yeah,
was
it
no
was empty. They
bullets.
were in the bag and everything.
Uh
They had the laser. They had like the logo of the person who bought it, and
huh.
but that's not. They didn't ban me from DC for the mags. So even if I didn't bring the mags, I would have still been banned from DC because the way that the judge ruled on my bail was she said that with me in town, check this out. Black Lives Matter banners are posted all over the city. So the entire city was at danger because I was in town. Now I wasn't charged with stealing the banner or taking it off a piece of property. I was charged with burning it. Right. So I said, whatever. It wasn't a big deal. Just bail me out. I've seen the president speak a million times. So I didn't care. I was like, okay, whatever. I'll leave. I'll go to Baltimore, right, which is where I went. I'll
Mhm.
go to Baltimore. I had to stop. I had to stop at a hotel to pick up my bags and then to go talk to speak with an attorney
Right.
before I left the district. But it wasn't a big deal to me. Like we had planned to go see the president. So like there was no it wasn't I'll just say it wasn't a big deal. The guys will still get to see the president. We'll still get to party on January 6th at night. We'll still get to we had like a little mini concert that was being put on by the lead singer of the Misfits. So I wasn't going to miss like the cool stuff to hang with the boys and stuff.
Mhm.
At the time, that was where my thought process was like,
Right.
whatever, just bail me out. Let's get out of here.
Right. So you went over to, and you were in Maryland or something on January 6th. Is
I
that
was in Baltimore, Maryland. Yeah.
Baltimore? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
And
when I went there,
there was another incident though on January 5th, and this also made news. And the left, how dishonest they are in our media today. You I really tell people we're at the point you can't trust a single thing they say, because it's overblown, it's just nonsense, it's never factually right. And so they had pictures of you with Stuart Rhodes at a secret meeting, and oh my goodness, you guys are planning insurrection, or what's happening here? And of course, this was screaming headlines, and they had some pictures of you with Stuart Rhodes. Can you tell us about that?
so Stuart is part of a group. Your viewers know it's called the Oath Keepers, and the Oath Keepers have an attorney on file. Also, maybe if some of your viewers don't know, I was also chief of staff for this organization called Latinos for Trump. It's a grassroots Latino movement to get out the Latino vote, which obviously we've been very successful with that. And we shared a lawyer with the Oath Keepers by the name of Kelly Sorrell. So when the judge gave me bond and I left, I had to go get my bags out of the hotel, and that hotel is where coincidentally Stuart Rhodes and the president of Latinos for Trump, Bianca Gracia, was staying, and Kelly Sorrell was there. So when I called Bianca, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go pick up my bag. She's like, hey, Kelly's here, and she wants to talk to you about this taking this case. And I'm like, oh yeah, perfect. So when we get to the hotel, we saw that there was a lot of movement. There was a lot, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just go to the garage, because the hotel had already warned me that if they see me there, they were going to call Metropolitan Police. So I'm like, let's just go around the corner. Let's just find a place to talk. We went into the garage, the nefarious garage.
Right.
And Kelly Sorrell's security detail, consisted of Stuart Rhodes and two of his guys. So, and just to rewind the story a little bit, me and Stuart on a personal level didn't get along very well before this. But we've never met. This is the first time we meet. So clearly in this video, that this dramatic video, you can hear very clearly that I go, hey, Stuart, nice to meet you. He tells me, hey, Enrique, nice to meet you. And I go, the pleasure's all mine.
Right.
When we take hands, we unlock hands, I see Kelly, and I'm like, okay, I need to talk to Kelly really quick. And I turn around, and that is the only interaction that me and Stuart had in that parking garage. The entire thing was recorded because we had a documentary crew that was following us. The entire thing was recorded, except obviously the meeting between me and Kelly Sorrell, because that's attorney-client privilege. So we told the cameras to go away, but they kept recording at a distance. And that's the only thing that happened in that garage.
Right.
The media got it, and it's like, oh my God, the two leaders of this group is planning
Yeah.
the coup or whatever. There was no planning of the coup. There was a handshake, pleasantries, and it lasted a whole about 5 seconds.
Right. Right. And of course, again, that made headlines with the media because they had to paint a picture of uh, the insurrection.
Yeah.
So the next day, I'll tell you what, I was at the January 6th speech for Trump. I was glad to see the Proud Boys there. They were working security in some of the areas. And I think everybody was pleased to see the Proud Boys there. You know, some groups that were uh, protecting people. And Trump spoke. It was very cold, as I recall. I don't know. I was freezing, and we were standing outside for at least 3 4 hours before Trump spoke. He finally spoke. And everybody's depressed because Mike Pence folded like a lawn chair, and that turncoat didn't do anything. Couldn't get the the nerve to send these really conflicting results back to the states. So,
Of course.
so we here's something that's interesting. This whole thing, as we get further away from this, this is just something that happened with myself personally. I was supposed to speak at the Capitol. They had reserved a time and a place. And there were several people who were supposed to speak there who were also watching Trump, including Alex Jones and a lot of other people. And, you know, that got canceled, even though they had a permit to be there. And um, but I believe today it was a setup. I think it was set up to get us to the Capitol. A lot of these people end up getting arrested, even though they had a permit to be there. We saw what the Proud Boys did. Nothing. There was no violence. They were picking up trash. They were actually protecting that officer Dunn. There's video footage now of this black officer who was the Proud Boys, and I believe it was the Proud Boys who were protecting him inside.
There's more footage of Officer Dunn that just came out last week. We'll talk about that later.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm all ears. Anyway, the Proud Boys did nothing wrong, and
Yes.
the Oath Keepers did a walk up the steps with a stack. I think that was, you know, no big deal. I mean, it's just this is, and of course these are screaming headlines. This is how the media is. Make you think, oh my God, it's a stack.
Yeah.
What the hell is that? It's just some guys walking upstairs.
That's how you walk at concerts, by the way. Like if you're at a concert and you're in a big group, you're like, okay, hold on to my shoulder.
Right, exactly.
So it's not a military move; it's more of a concert move.
Right. So anyway, but nothing happened, and
Yeah.
and the Proud Boys weren't leading it. There was one Proud Boy who was caught breaking into a one of the garage doors that opened, and he was one of the first ones who got in. But we find out later he was a plant by the federal government, by the FBI. So he was a plant. So this is what we had, and you're watching from Baltimore. What are you? What's happening during that time for you?
So I start watching it pretty late because I didn't have a phone, right? So because when I was arrested, they kept my phone for some reason. I didn't get that. But I'll tell you why. I didn't get that at the time. I'm like, wait, I just got charged with a misdemeanor. Why are they taking my phone and they're not giving me back my phone? That's crazy. So I didn't have communication. So I kind of woke up late that day. I turned on the news and it was just about the Trump rally or whatever. And then I left to go I went to Walgreens to go buy a phone, right? I never activated it. I just connected to the Wi-Fi just so I could log into my social media. But by the time I got back, when I look at the TV screen, it's already late. So the first images I'm getting is people inside the Senate chamber. And I said, oh my God, this is so cool. They did a Capitol tour. My exact thoughts at that very moment was they did like a Capitol tour. I don't know if you've ever done a Capitol tour. You just pay for it and they walk you in. And I'm like, oh man, they did a Capitol tour. And then these Trump supporters just went wild. So then the images started coming in a little by little, and I'm getting these and I'm absorbing them and I'm celebrating it on my social media because I finally got to log in, and I'm celebrating on my social media. And one of them is like, I'm cheering for my team. I'm like, don't effing leave, right? Which was a big portion of my trial because I said that they're like, oh, he communicated with the Proud Boys and said, don't effing leave. I can't communicate with the Proud Boys through social media. Like I would just message them and be like, hey guys, I'd like do the command thing or whatever that they accuse me of doing. But I saw it. I s- you probably found out about it before I did. A lot of America probably found out before I did.
Wow.
Because I wasn't watching the news because I didn't have a device to view the news on. I was literally skateboarding down the streets of Baltimore to go find a phone, and the Walgreens was not close.
Wow, that is really amazing.
Yeah.
So you had no idea that this was going on, and yet later on they tried to pin an
Yeah.
insurrection on you.
The plans for that day were real simple. The president, for one, up until like 2 days before, we didn't even know that the president was going to speak. That's why, like you said, that there was like these permitted areas because people started putting events all over town beforehand and pulling permits beforehand. And then they kind of got screwed up because the president's like, well, I'm going to speak. Well, nobody's going to show up to anybody else's event. So when that happened, I was supposed to speak on a stage at 1:30. The president was supposed to stop speaking at 1, so we staged at 1:30 by the Washington Monument. And then at about 2:15 to 2:30, I was supposed to be at another permitted event in front of the Capitol. And then after that event, our plans were to leave DC, go to Virginia to listen to the Misfits lead singer do like an unplugged session. So I don't. Uh, the prosecutors knew that this was the case. They didn't present it that way, but what did they think that I was going to? What did the jury think I was going to do? Did they think that I was going to overthrow the U.S. government at 1 o'clock and then
On a skateboard.
go to on a skateboard and go to a concert at 2:30? It just doesn't make sense to me. We lost that trial on the first day on jury selection.
Sure.
They selected the foreman of the jury organizes drag queen story hour, which we've protested for years.
Mm.
So, and then not to mention all the other members of the jury, but there wasn't a single, forget independent, there wasn't a single conservative, independent, center left person in our jury. That was a jury of 15 people.
It was a kangaroo court for sure. You know, one thing I forgot to ask you, Enrique,
Go ahead.
you had that other court case, and the judge wanted to put you away for 1.5 years. What do you remember the name of that judge? Do you know
Judge Cushenberry? He's the senior judge in the Superior Court.
Okay, I was just thinking of that.
Yeah. Superior Court is different from the federal court, so it would have been one of those judges, those J6 judges. But no, he's part of the Superior Court. He was a senior judge.
Yeah. So anyway, this going back to January 6th, this is absolutely startling what you're telling us. Here you are, the media has painted you as being the top villain in the country, you and Stuart Rhodes, the Proud Boys. And yet you're out skateboarding, trying to find a phone and planning to go to a concert.
Yes.
And they knew that. They knew that.
Yeah.
So anyway,
they didn't let us present that as a defense, by the way.
What was that?
They didn't let us present that as a defense, by the way, which is the truth.
Right.
But
that's disgusting. It's just a kangaroo court, and it's very obvious. And I hope as the days go by, that people will start to understand what really happened. So thank you for speaking to us and for your courage through all this. I mean, it just blows my mind. I don't know what I'd do when they accuse you of doing all these nefarious things. None of it was real.
The real story, you know why the real story to them didn't work?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's boring. It's a bunch of dudes that like drinking, right? Like fighting, right? And that wanted to just listen to the president speak. They make us sound so cool, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
I always say this, I wish I was half as cool as they make us out to be, right? Where they're like, oh, he's like this mastermind that puppeteered the whole thing. The judge literally called me the ultimate leader of January 6th, right? And again, it just sounds so cool that I have this ability. I have from Baltimore with no phone, right? I have these telekinesis powers where I get into people's mind, I move barriers, and I convince I don't know how many people went in there. Let's just say like
Yeah.
7,000 people that they have to go overthrow the U.S. government, which I think is, to be honest with you, if you wanted to overthrow the U.S. government, breaking into the Capitol is probably a stupid idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it wasn't even a good idea. If that's the case that they present,
Yeah.
and it wasn't. It definitely wasn't my plans. And after talking to Stuart for this past whole week, it definitely was. Even though I knew this before, it definitely wasn't his plan either.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, let's jump ahead a little bit.
Okay.
But then you get arrested. When was that?
I got arrested in March of 2022, a year and about 2 months later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were out, but of course, I'm sure that you had some visits from the FBI by that. No interviews, nothing. They just let you go.
No.
Okay.
They were trying to get a grand jury indictment for a whole year and they couldn't until they found a piece of evidence
Ah.
of
And
the insurrection.
and that was that evidence again. That was the 1776 returns. Is that document?
That is 100% correct. That is what got
Okay.
me the grand jury indictment.
And I remember I read I don't know if you've ever read this article. The New York Times had an article about how the prosecution was so excited. They had these brilliant, young FBI professionals looking, and then all of a sudden they found it. They're running down the hall and they're so excited. We got it. We got the information. Here it is, and it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
The whole thing was nonsense. They found, and I was going to get into that a little later, but let's just do it. They found this 1776 returns document inside a chat group that you belong to,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Was that a Telegram, or I guess it
That was
does.
on Telegram.
Okay, and this document is eerily about how to overthrow the government after an election and how to overthrow the Capitol, I believe.
So the document's name made it sound a lot more nefarious and a lot more sinister than what it actually is. If you read through the document, I mean, I think it does have. I think the roots of the document do have like a sinister intention, but the actual document isn't per se like a bad document per se, because what it is, it's instructions for a sit-in, right? Again, I want to
So
put
it's not instructions for an overthrow of the government. It's instructions to hold a sit-in, is what you're saying.
well, I believe the author might have those intentions of overthrowing the U.S. government, but when you read the actual document to the people, it's actually a sit-in to show you how to get in a building, lock hands, and sit down and not leave, right? Which
Mhm.
didn't include the actual Capitol building. It included like the Rayburn building and a couple of other buildings around. So the document itself, and I guess we'll get into the more sinister portion of it in a sec, but the document was sent to me, right? And that's what they used to get the grand jury indictment. They went ahead and they got my like the copy of my phone, and they're like, look, this is what Enrique Tarrio had on his phone. He had this
Wow.
1976 returns document that shows this nefarious plan to overthrow the U.S. government. So obviously the grand jury ate this up, but there was one detail that they left out.
Uh-huh.
That document was never opened. The forensics team and the FBI knew that the day that they presented that evidence
Wow.
to the grand jury. So
Was that ever presented in court? Did the jury ever hear that it was never opened?
Yes, they did hear that. The judge allowed the document to come in on our position that we never opened it, which again, that's a whole other ball game. But the document was never opened, and they do have a way to check if the document was seen or open.
Right.
If you've seen Telegram or WhatsApp, right? When you send somebody something, it has one check. when they see it, it has two checks. That's exactly how Telegram works. In my
Uh-huh.
case, it still had one check because I never
Wow.
even saw it or opened it. They admitted that in open court. Therefore, already the grand jury indictment was already illegal in this case.
That's just so amazing. So this is the evidence they had against you, and um, to add a little bit more details, and you could add on to this, but this was a document that was written by a man named Samuel Arms, who gave it to a mutual friend, who
Yes.
gave it to you,
Yes.
and you put it in, or I guess you loaded it, or did someone else load it? You loaded it into the Telegram group.
No, I didn't load it. That person. So the way that it works is,
Uh,
and it goes beyond that. It's one step beyond that. So
okay.
Samuel Arms gathered this document from a CIA war game. Okay, that was actually hosted in Langley. Um, this CIA war game document that he worked on, right? Because he wasn't the only author, was given to this woman called Erica Flores, right?
Mhm.
Um, and was he was she was told by Samuel Arms to give this to me specifically. So she's like, "Oh, okay." She never read the document. She just sent it to me, right? At the time, she sent it to me once. I never read it, and then the second time she did read it, and she sent it over to me. Um, at that very moment, because what happened on January 4th when I got arrested, they put my phone on airplane mode, and essentially they froze my phone in time. Therefore, no messages can be deleted, and no messages can be edited at that time.
Mhm.
Very time that my phone was frozen, I had 2.3 million unread messages on Telegram alone. 2.3 million
Wow.
messages on Telegram alone that I didn't read. Um, those messages from her being a big group of them that I did not read. Um, and they still presented it in court. So this CIA war game document that was authored. I'm not a conspiracy. I want people to know I am not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think the world's flat. I don't think like this was real. This is not me saying this is it's documented that this document came from Langley and then was given to Samuel Arms, and then he directly we saw those messages where he told her, "Hey, I need you to give this to Enrique Tarrio," and that document was used for that. And
Mhm.
when I get the protective order lifted, I'll be able to talk about it a little bit more because there
Right.
is very, very, very interested twist to this whole thing. Uh,
Mhm.
but I promise that the Gateway Pundit will be the first to
Oh, bless
report.
your heart.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great. I love it. Yeah, and for listeners out there, we should also add, and I can add this. This Samuel Arms was in college. He was being contacted by the CIA, FBI to be an operative for them. So he's the one who gets this to the eventually get this document into the Proud Boys little chat group. Uh, and
It was actually a public. It was actually a public chat group.
Oh, really? That's
Yes,
amazing.
anybody could jump in and read.
Well,
It
there you
was
go.
actually also, to be clear, it was also messaged to me directly.
Okay.
In all three instances of this document being sent to me, all three I never read.
Yeah, that's amazing. And this is the evidence that the New York Times screaming about, and they're talking about how this was such a historic period in
Yeah.
spy warfare in the United States, and they found how the Proud Boys had been plotting this with this document, and so it's all a lie, and this was what they presented in court, and it's disgusting to me, Enrique, and I don't know how do you sit in court when these people lie about you day after day, and they lie about the evidence, and they lie about this document that you've never read? How obviously how do you do it?
You know how I do it, Jim?
Hmm.
I smile.
Yeah.
Sit there and I smile because I already know the outcome. I already know.
Yeah. You
And I
didn't know
knew,
how severe it was going to be.
yeah. Uh, I knew one thing. I knew
Hmm.
one way or another, God was going to pull me out of there. I knew one way whether it's through appeal, through a Supreme Court, or the best way to get out of this whole mess was through the election of Donald J. Trump. I was going to get back home to my family and I wasn't going to have to serve anything um, of whatever it was that they were going to sentence me to at the time. So in that whole courtroom, which Kara and Alicia and other writers for the Gateway Pundit sat there, they can tell you I had a smile on my face the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great way to do it. I just can't imagine going through something like that. It sounds like hell. And
Yeah.
and also, let me ask you this: did this surprise you about America? Did this surprise you that you're going through something that's so surreal? That would, you come from, your family comes from Cuba where they've been persecuted. Did this? Tell me your thoughts about that. How did that feel coming after you come from Cuba and you come over here, the great freedom for America, and this is what they're doing to you.
Jim, this isn't my first rodeo. I did screw up in 2013 and I did something wrong. I sold diabetic test strips without a license and I went to prison. I went to prison for 10 months of my life, which it was nothing compared to what I got sentenced to after. But I already knew that the justice system was broken based on just how that worked, right? Because even admitting guilt at that time, the justice system was screwed up. But one thing I didn't expect was that the government was going to sit there and lie to win. I that's one thing I didn't expect.
Wow.
After I started seeing how the emotions were coming through and what they were claiming, before trial started, I already knew how corrupt the system is. I didn't know how corrupt the Bureau of Prisons and the jail system was. The treatment of prisoners, the treatment of other J6ers, that I didn't know. So that I learned.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know that the government would be so evil in prosecuting these cases and lying, right? Lying under oath, FBI agents lying under oath, officers like Officer Fanone, Officer Dunn, and the rest of these wahoos that find joy in putting people in a concrete box.
Yeah.
Because that's what they do.
That's what they did.
That is a pure definition of evil.
I would say, yeah. And who was a judge in your case again? It was a different case, of course.
The dishonorable Judge Timothy J. Kelly.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's something else.
Yeah, one of the worst judges. I mean, obviously, every J6er is going to say that their judge is the worst, but I think
Yeah.
I think we have documented proof that when you sentence people to 22 years, 18 years, 17, 15, and 10 years respectively, that I probably had one of the worst judges.
Yeah. Yeah. So the sentence comes out. You're guilty, of course. Kangaroo court.
Of course.
With bogus information, it was all lies, and everybody knew it was lies. And by the way, Kara and Alicia were reporting this live, this information that was very shocking to where they're breaking down what's really happening, and that this document that they used as evidence was actually written by the feds. Yeah. So then you get sentenced, and I believe they added extra years onto your sentencing. That's correct? Is that
the maximum I'm sorry I'm laughing about it, but the maximum was 20 years. There were 20-year maximum sentence, and the judge decided to go 22 years. And the prosecutors didn't think it was enough. The prosecutors wanted to nail me with 33 years. So even after the judge sentences me to a ridiculous 22 years, which is already over the maximum, before we got a chance to appeal, the government appealed, and it's like, well, this judge was too lenient on Enrique Tarrio. He was supposed to get 33 years. Now he got 22. So something that we typically never see in court cases. That's how evil and sinister they are. And I hope at this point that the FBI agents and the prosecutors are fired. I hope with the confirmation of Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, I hope that they're fired. I hope that they're investigated. And if they're investigated, they will find crimes. And if they find crimes, they will be convicted. And if they are convicted, put them in a concrete box. I'm not Mr. Nice Guy that's gonna go, oh no, we gotta play it fair. No, you know what? You put me in a concrete box. Now you should this is what what this is what accountability looks like. My retaliation and my retribution is accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole thing was lies, and they had no problem putting you in jail for 22, 33 years, all based on a lie. Guy who's skateboarding down the street one day is then accused of
One of the most
masterminding
heinous crimes
over
in America.
the country. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such bullshit.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Um, I There's something I was reading this morning before I talked to you, and I thought this was interesting. There's a Georgia man who planted a bomb at his woman's house
No.
and allegedly planned to release a large python to eat her kid.
Oh.
And this guy was sentenced to 20 years in prison,
Oh.
right?
Okay.
And as I read that, I'm thinking, okay, and Enrique gets 22.
Yeah.
So how do how do you square that peg? It's just it's so over the top what they did to you, and I'm sure you understand that now. Um, did it ever hit you that you were this pawn, that you were just the sacrificial lamb that they were using to take down Trump, take down MAGA, destroy the country, bring in communism? Did that ever hit you?
Well, here's another first from the Gateway Pundit, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
the first one to report this. And you know
Mm-hmm.
what? You know when I found that out that I was a pawn? When
Mm.
they decided to stick me in a room and push a paper in front of me, a narrative, not even asking for the truth, a narrative that the person who instructed me to
Mm.
try to overthrow the government that day was Donald J. Trump, right?
Wow.
They wanted me to throw Donald J. Trump under the bus. The president of the United States, they wanted me to throw him under the bus. And
Wow.
they literally said, you next week we will grant you a bail hearing and you will be bailed out, right? And you go home free and you will never serve a single day in prison. Not if you say the truth, right? Not if like, oh,
Right.
well, you tell us the truth and we'll minimize your sentence. No, they're like, well, you say what's on this paper, right? Which was me blaming the president, and you don't have to serve a single day in
Mhm.
prison anymore. After your bail hearing, obviously, because the judge has to approve. And I'm sure Timothy J. Kelly would have approved this. They wanted me to throw the president under the bus, and when I told them no, that's why they gave me 22 years, which is pretty much a life sentence.
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
still consider myself a young guy.
Mhm.
I was 38 years old at the time.
Yeah.
But that is a life sentence.
Yeah. 60. That's crazy. Now, when did they push that at you? Was that after you were after
No, that
found
was
guilty?
well, that was before trial.
Before trial?
Yeah, before trial, they're like, look, you don't have to go to trial. You don't got to testify against your own guys. All you got to do is testify against us,
Yeah.
and you get to go home scot free, no problem.
I hope that Cash Patel pays attention to this video, and Pam Bondi, and our friend Dan Bongino, so that they can look into who this was that pushed that paper across the table to you. And
Yeah.
we don't even have to mention that today, but I hope they look into that, because that is one of the most disgusting things I've heard. And I think most Americans, and I would pray that not just Republicans, that Democrats would be just appalled that that's what they did to you. It's disturbing that our government would do something like that.
Yeah, and it's real. This is America.
Right.
They don't have civics class anymore, but as a kid, I got taught in civics class. They showed like the whole rule of law with the blindfolded woman and the scales, and you think that you live in the freest country in the world, and we're not. And like, I'm happy that the president won. Obviously, he gave me my life back, so there's no way I could repay that. And we're celebrating because we won. But the celebration's over. The celebration should have been over on January 21st. The fight, you got to fight for the next 4 years, and the 4 years after that, and the next 100 years,
Yeah.
because we're happy now. What happens in 4 years when Democrats figure out how to cheat again, um, and we get another oppressive government, I'm telling you right now, Jim,
Yeah, we
I'm
know
not
what's going to
I'm
happen.
not going back to prison. I'm
Right.
telling you right
We all know what's happening. And I'm sorry I interrupted you there. You said
now. Go ahead.
you're not going back to prison.
I'm not going back to prison. I'll leave, but they're not putting me back in a cage.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying this in like an SJW way. Oh, if I don't get the president I want, I'm leaving the country. This isn't like when Robert De Niro or anybody says, "Well, I'm leaving the country," or Whoopi Goldberg, "I'm leaving the country," because they don't. They're just leaving the. They'll never leave the country, anyways.
Right.
My life is on the line because they're going to try to find in the United States. You could indict a ham sandwich, and they will be passing out ham sandwiches for free in DC if the Democrats win again. I said this before the election. I said if Joe Biden wins the election, the Proud Boys will become political prisoners and they will put us in chains. I said this in November of 2020. It was
Wow.
prophetic. It was prophetic.
Hmm. That's exactly what happened. Tell me about when you found out that you were going to be free.
Well, I'm going to throw the question back at you. When do you think I thought I was free? You think I was free? You think I thought I was free on January 21st when I actually got released?
I don't know. I can't imagine. I
It,
can't
it
imagine.
wasn't that day, Jim. The day that I knew that I was free, that literally, like, I'm not exaggerating. And Kara did an amazing, put it this way, when I read it, I cried. Uh,
Oh,
she, she's an amazing writer. You have gold.
yeah.
You have gold with Kara.
Mhm.
Um, on November 5th, when I was sitting in a cell by myself in solitary with my ear pressed against under through the crack of the door so I could listen to the officer's radio give the the results of the election, and I heard Pennsylvania come in. Um my eyes went from like these dull khaki and gray colors to full colors. Like I was seeing the world differently. That was the day that I was free. At that point, I got you guys reported on this extensively also, is they transferred me from 40 different prisons. I didn't care if they transferred me to 40 more. I knew that on January 20th, we were going to go free because we had a president that his main motto is promises made, promises kept. I didn't think it was gonna. I honestly, I didn't think it was gonna be so fast because I thought the process was different. I thought like the president pardoned you, and there was a whole process, and it was gonna take a week or two. So I was kind of surprised that I got released so fast. And another thing that a lot of people don't know is if you were following the events of inauguration day, he got inaugurated at exactly noon. Everybody was waiting till his 5 o'clock signings at like an arena. I think it was at the John F. Kennedy Center, if I'm not mistaken, um, so he could sign the pardons. Let me tell you something. At 1:30 p.m., an hour and a half uh, after his uh, he swore on that Bible, the BOP had already started getting emails and faxes saying to prepare for release. So they started knocking on our doors at like 2:30, 3 o'clock. So that whole signing thing at 5 o'clock, that was just a show. He
Wow.
had already signed those pardons, and he was already getting ready for our release. And another funny thing is, I was one of the last. I was one of the last first releases because there's still about 5 or 6 gentlemen that are still locked up for January 6th that are pardoned. One of them is Jeremy Brown. We need to bring up
Sure.
Jeremy Brown, but I was one of the last of the first to be released because I was supposed to get released that same day, and the the warden's like, "Look, I know I'm supposed to release you, but I just need to make sure because I don't think the pardon doesn't seem to cover you." I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Oh no.
And I still didn't worry
What a
because I'm like, for
nightmare.
sure I'm getting released. But
Right.
she's like, well, the pardon specifically says that it's for people that were in and around the Capitol. And as you know, out of the 1,600 January 6 defendants, I'm the only one that wasn't there. So she's like, I don't know if around means probably Baltimore because she knew the story. So she's like, again, I don't want you to be offended. And I was like, well, I'm not offended, but you're kind of like holding me in here, lady. So she called the administration. The administration goes, yes, he does. So they released me the following morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were wondering what was going on there.
Yeah.
Great story. Um, tell me one thing I forgot to ask this. When you were in prison, how were you treated? Did it depend on the facility
It
or
it did depend on the facility. Most facilities in like big blue cities like Atlanta, United States Penitentiary Atlanta, which is where Jeremy Brown's being held right now, that is one of the worst prisons for treatment in the United States right now currently. You're locked in almost 24/7. The officers do not pass by for anything. I've seen people die and get pulled out of their cells, and they've been dead for about 4 hours, and they look like a sheet of plywood when they pull them out.
not?
Medical attention's horrible. I think I'm a man I'm a very competitive person, and I like being first. But there's some categories of first that I honestly don't like, and the 22-year sentence thing, it wasn't enjoyable. But I think I hold the record of January Sixers that have been transferred. I got transferred to 40 different facilities, whether they're counties, federal holdovers, or federal prisons. Um, so I've been everywhere, and
Now,
even in the friendlier facilities, it's still bad. So the prison system needs reform. The Bureau of Prisons, I hope Pam Bondi puts somebody in there that actually cares. And in another rare instance of bipartisanship by me, I think it has to be whoever gets their hands on the Bureau of Prisons has to be somebody that used to be a liberal, and it focuses on like prison reform. um I don't think that those people are liberals anymore, because prison reform is a Trump thing now. We saw
right.
that First Step Act back in 2018. But I think it has to be somebody that actually cares about conditions of prisoners. So I think that that person has to have the view of both sides of the aisle, because it isn't about right or left there. I think it has to do with knowing how the system works. So maybe even somebody that's been an inmate before in the federal system.
Right. Very. Thank you for that. So you get out. How has it been? How are you doing?
I I was talking to Kara before release, and I told her that I think when I get out, I think I'm going to take like a month off, and I'm going to, turn off my phone, watch Netflix or whatever, like a streaming service, and just like lay in bed, you know. And I've done the exact opposite. I have not stopped. I don't sleep. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. I'm saying like I love living. I love being awake. I love working. I love what I do. I love my guys. I love my tribe, my family. And that's what I've dedicated my life to. It's still not real to me that I'm out here, because it's just it's a little under 2 months that I've been out. So I haven't had a problem adjusting. It just doesn't, I haven't had that snap like, hey, you're free. Maybe it comes in at some point where like I get in fetal position and I just let it all out. I doubt that's gonna happen, because again, I'm really enjoying my life right now. And yeah, and I'm enjoying my family, I'm enjoying my friends, I'm enjoying my brothers, I'm enjoying, this conversation with you, Jim. So this is what I live for. I live for people. I
That's
live for
awesome.
conversations.
That's awesome. I'm so happy that you're out and this horror is mostly over. I hope it's over for good. Never
Yeah.
have to go through anything like this again. I hope no one in the country ever has to go through something like this, such a setup.
Yeah.
Um, so one last question then.
Go ahead.
this past weekend we saw video of you confronting Officer Fanone. He's the hillbilly cop who actually went to a prep school, so he's a hillbilly prep schooler who made headlines. I think he was a CNN contributor for a while. Maybe he still
Yeah,
is.
he still is. He still.
And I've heard from a lot of J6ers, they believe that he wasn't telling the truth about what happened to him that day. And we also know that Officer Dunn, there's actually video proof that he wasn't telling the truth under oath.
Yeah.
So you happen to run into these guys and a few others this past weekend, huh?
Yes. So we've had a very eventful week from Antifa assaulting me and putting hands on me and me tossing their phone across the street and me getting arrested for it and getting released. But there was this convention where we saw, let me see if I can name some of these people that were at this convention. It was, people like Mark Cuban, Paulus, Chris Christie, Michael Steele, Adam Kissinger, Harry Dunn, and the rest of those Capitol Police have taken advantage to sell books and run for Congress. A failure at running for Congress. His own people didn't want him, Mr. Dunn. They had this convention because obviously they're not allowed at CPAC. They had this conservative convention, and we were close to the area. We're like, oh, let's go check it out. There was a really good lunch place inside the JW Marriott. So we went to go have lunch, and we run into Officer Dunn and Officer Fanone in the lobby. And I go, okay, cool. Let's go talk to them because I wanted to confront them. I wanted to confront them because, besides sitting in my trial, right, at sentencing, sentencing was really the people who suffered the most from me being incarcerated was my family. One gets adapted to living in there. It becomes life. That you wake up every day inside a cell, and that you kind of just accept it that's going to be life for a long time. My mom didn't accept it. My mom fought for me every day. My family fought for me every day, and they suffered more than I did. So when I got sentenced, that was the hardest day for my family, the hardest day for my mother. Officer Dunn was in the courtroom. He sat next to my mother. He knew who my mother was. He sat next to my mother. And when the judge sentenced me to 22 years, I heard her sob. And that man sat next to my mother, and he laughed. He audibly laughed when I got 22 years of my life taken from me. So I saw him in the lobby, and I saw Officer Fanone in the lobby, which again also was in my trial, sat in the pews in my trial, and I wanted some words. I wanted them to look me in the eye and tell me, all those words that you said in public, like you're here now, and I wanted to listen to them. I wasn't going to do anything to them, and they knew that. They ran away. They couldn't look me in the eye. I called them cowards, and very, very few people have told me, "Hey, you could have handled it better." Again, it's very, very few people, and I kind of agree with them. I could have handled it better. Maybe I shouldn't have cussed, but these people sat there and like laughed while my mom's heart was broken. The least I can do is confront them and call them cowards, because that's what they are. They are cowards and they are traitors, okay, to this country. They sold themselves out. Their own. I literally got a message today after those videos came in by two different ex-Metropolitan police officers that worked with Officer Fanone, and said that they are so happy that I confronted him because he's such a coward. He was such a coward. And they said that they couldn't be happier with what happened that day, because they made their police force look bad. There's good and bad cops in every department, and there's very good cops in the Metropolitan Police Department. And one of them, again, you guys reported on, his name was Shane Lamont. And if there's anybody besides like the J6ers that deserves a pardon, it is Lieutenant Shane Lamont, which was trying to keep the peace that day, on not only in the November rally and the December rally, but in many other rallies that happened in DC that day. And because I put him on my witness list, the FBI knocked on his door and put him in handcuffs. That is why they arrested him. So he technically is another J6er, right? Because if I'm a J6er and I wasn't there and I was arrested for the events of J6, he's in the same boat.
Wow.
If you said if I forgot, if somebody was watching this show, if Donald Trump is watching this, please look into Lieutenant Shane Lamont, a 22-year veteran, the head of intelligence for Metropolitan Police Department that kept the peace in DC as best as he could, right in that war zone of Baghdad, Washington. He needs a pardon.
That's great. That's great. You know, I watched that video, Enrique, and the thing I saw, and maybe you, I don't know, we had to watch 4 years of these guys treated like heroes. You know, these cops. We saw that they had lied in court. We saw that they had committed perjury. We saw that they were lying about the whole thing. And to watch this past weekend, you know, it started out they're calling you a traitor, and then all of a sudden, the tide turned, and you threw back at them. You're the traitor.
Yes.
And I'll tell you what, I believe they just visibly were shaken because they've never been called the traitor that they really are, and they couldn't hide it because I think they know, of course they know, that they're lying, that they got away with perjury, and that you know, that they're the real villains. And I think they just melted away. I just was watching that. I just thought it was I commend you for that.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was really an amazing stand for you to go ask those guys, you know, let's have a conversation. And they ran away and got in the elevator and fled like, you know.
Yeah, he waited till he got in the elevator to say everything, all this crazy other stuff, all these threats to the fact. Yeah, you know, when you have like 4 different like Karens pushing you in the elevator and you're using like these older ladies as your security,
yeah,
you're gonna start saying something. But
as your buffer zone.
As much as I'm enjoying you sitting in that seat, there's somebody that I prefer to be sitting in that seat right now. I prefer that Officer Fanon be sitting on that seat, and for me and him to have an actual debate on the events of January 6th, on the truth of what happened on January 6th. So here's another thing. If Officer Fanon's watching this, why don't you host a debate between Jim will host a debate between me and you, and we'll sit here and we'll see who can actually speak truth to power, because you are a coward, and you would never take that seat, and you would never debate me in here. I would love to have that conversation with either him or Officer Dunn on this platform.
Wow. Well, there you go. We'll definitely put that out there. That's going to be a nice clip to put out on Twitter. Yeah. Anyway,
it's true. Those are the best. Like I enjoy doing. I enjoy doing all kinds of media, but I'm a little bit different. And people, some of the guys are like, "Man, no way! Why are you so weird?" I would love to get on like Joy Reid's show. Well, I can't get on Joy Reid's show anymore. I would love to get on like Rachel Maddow or Morning Joe. Like I'd like all that. I would love to get on one of those shows, because that's what I enjoy. I enjoy that, like exposing that. So I'd love the Officer Fanon to be on this show. I mean, he doesn't have to be scared, right? Because he doesn't have to run away from me. I wasn't going to do anything to him anyways, but he's probably like thousands of miles away from me. We could do this on camera.
There you go. Yeah. Well, we'll throw it out there. We'll see what happens. Enrique, it's great to see you out of prison. It's great to talk to you finally. And congratulations. I'm glad you're doing so well. And we wish the best for you um, in the days ahead. So thanks so much. Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Jim. Thank you for having me. You have an amazing publication. You've had an amazing publication for a long time, and you've hired a lot of great writers. And again, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank Alicia Powell, and I'd like to thank Kara Castronova. You really do have probably the most amazing media company that's out there right now.
Well, thank you, Enrique. I appreciate that. Take care. We'll talk soon.
All right.